Number: the broken heirloom. The cargo bay of the Talon's Edge was quiet at this hour. Most of the crew had gone to their quarters for rest cycle, leaving only the hum of the ship's engines and the soft glow of emergency lights. Lieutenant Jiho walked through the stacked containers, checking seals and running his routine maintenance scans. He liked the night shift. It gave him time to think. A soft sound made him stop. It came from behind a stack of supply crates. Jiho moved closer, his hand instinctively reaching for the small toolkit on his belt. The sound came again. It was breathing. Heavy and uneven. "Hello?" Jiho called out in standard Galactic. "Someone there?" A figure emerged from the shadows. It was a Velcrin, one of the reptilian warriors who served on the ship. But this was no adult soldier. The creature was young, barely reaching Jiho's shoulder. His scales were a lighter green than the older warriors, and his eyes were wide with fear. "Please," the young Velcrin said, his voice shaking. "They said you could help. They said humans fix things." Jiho lowered his hands to show he meant no threat. "Easy now." "What's your name?" "Kresh." The young warrior clutched something wrapped in dark cloth against his chest. "I need help. Please." Jiho gestured to a nearby supply crate. "Sit down. Tell me what's wrong." Kresh sat, his tail curling around his feet in a gesture Jiho had learned meant distress in Velcrin body language. Slowly, carefully, the young warrior unwrapped the cloth. Inside was a blade. At least, it had been a blade once. The weapon was beautiful, even in its broken state. The handle was made of some kind of bio-organic material, carved with intricate patterns. The blade itself had been crystalline, catching light in rainbow colors. But now the crystal was shattered, with pieces missing. The handle's grip was dying, turning gray and brittle. "This was my grandfather's blade," Kresh said quietly. "His grandfather gave it to him. It has passed through 12 generations of my family." Jiho picked up the blade carefully, examining the damage. "What happened?" "My first combat trial." Kresh's voice was barely a whisper. "There was an ambush drill. My squad partner fell. I dove to cover him and dropped the blade. It hit the deck and shattered." "You saved your partner's life," Jiho said. "Yes." Kresh's scales seemed to darken. "But I broke the blade. In my culture, this means I have brought shame to my bloodline. A warrior who cannot keep his weapon whole cannot be trusted. I will be sent away from my clan." "That seems harsh." "It is our law." Kresh looked at the blade with such sadness that Jiho felt his heart ache. "I heard the others talk about humans. They say you fix things. Not just repair them, you make them whole again. I know it is too broken, but I had to try. This blade is all I have of my family." Jiho studied the weapon more closely. The crystalline blade was definitely beyond simple repair. He would need to find replacement materials, and he doubted he could match the original Velcrin craftsmanship. The biogrip was almost dead. Any other engineer would call this trash. But Jiho saw something else. He saw what this blade meant. He saw a scared kid who had chosen to save a life and was being punished for it. He saw a family history about to end because of an accident. "I'll try," Jiho said, "but I need to be honest with you. I can't make it exactly like it was. I don't have the materials or the knowledge of Velcrin crystal forging, but I can try to make it whole again. It will be different." Kresh's eyes brightened with desperate hope. "Different is better than broken. Give me 3 weeks," Jiho said. "Come back to this cargo bay. Same time. Don't tell anyone. If I fail, there's no point in getting your hopes up." Kresh nodded and left quickly, disappearing into the shadows like a ghost. Jiho looked down at the broken blade in his hands. He had just promised something he wasn't sure he could deliver. The next 3 weeks became an obsession. Jiho worked his regular shifts, then spent every spare moment in the workshop. He studied the blade from every angle. He ran material analyses on the crystal fragments. He researched Velcrin culture and blade-making traditions in the ship's database. The crystal was the biggest problem. It was a naturally occurring material from the Velkrin homeworld, formed in volcanic vents over centuries. It was nearly impossible to replicate. But Jiho had an idea. He took the largest fragment of the original crystal and used it as a core. Around it, he built a lattice structure using a human-made alloy, one that was both strong and flexible. He arranged the lattice so the original crystal fragment sat at the blade's center, visible through the metalwork. The new blade wouldn't cut exactly like the old one, but it would hold an edge and honor the original material. The biogrip was easier. Jiho cultured new organic material using samples from the dying grip, mixed with human bioengineering techniques. He regrew it slowly, carefully, letting it wrap around the handle in new patterns that echoed the old designs. He worked late into the night cycles, his eyes burning from the precision work. Other crew members asked what he was doing, but he just said he was working on a personal project. His friend Taeyang brought him coffee and didn't ask questions. Finally, on the last day of the third week, it was done. Jiho held the blade up to the light. It was not the original weapon. The lattice work was clearly human design. The grip showed both Velkrin and human bioculture patterns. But it was beautiful in a new way. It told a story. This blade had broken. This blade had been remade. This blade had survived. That night, Jiho waited in the cargo bay. Kresh arrived exactly on time, his movements nervous and quick. "I don't know if this is what you wanted," Jiho said, handing over the wrapped blade. Kresh unwrapped it slowly. His hands froze. For a long moment, he just stared. Then he ran his clawed fingers over the lattice work, over the new grip, over the fragment of original crystal that still glowed at the blade's heart. "It's not the same," Kresh whispered. Jiho's heart sank. "I know. I'm sorry. I tried to. It's better." Kresh looked up, and his eyes were bright with tears. "It shows everything. It shows the original blade. It shows that it broke. It shows that it survived. This is not just my grandfather's blade anymore. This is my blade too. My story is part of it now." Relief flooded through Jiho. "Your elders will accept it?" "I don't know," Kresh admitted. "But I will present it with pride. This blade has been twice forged now. Once by my ancestors, once by you. That has to mean something." Kresh left, carrying his blade like it was made of starlight. Jiho watched him go and felt something warm in his chest. He had no idea that this moment, this simple act of fixing one broken thing for one scared kid, was about to change everything. 3 months later, Jiho would walk through the ship and notice Velkrin warriors nodding to him with respect. He would overhear conversations in the mess hall about the human who mends things. He would be approached by others carrying their own broken treasures, their own shattered hopes. But that night, he just cleaned up his workshop and went to bed, satisfied that he had helped one person. Sometimes, that was enough. Sometimes, one person was how you changed the galaxy. The blade that had been broken was now twice forged, and the story was just beginning. The word spreads. The story of Kresh's blade traveled through the ship like fire through dry grass. It started in the Velkrin quarters, where the young warrior showed his weapon to the elders. They had examined it closely, turning it over in their clawed hands, testing its weight and balance. The head elder had spoken words that would be repeated across the fleet. "This blade has died and been reborn. It is twice forged. The human has given our young warrior a second chance." From there, the story spread to other species. In the mess halls, crew members talked about the human engineer who could fix anything. In the maintenance bays, workers whispered about impossible repairs. The story grew with each telling. But at its heart remained a simple truth. Humans could mend broken things. Taeyang was the next human to discover what this meant. He was working on a power relay in the engineering section when a Nethics officer approached him. The Nethics were insect-like beings, with multiple arms and compound eyes that saw in spectrums humans couldn't imagine. They were brilliant with technology, and lived in a kind of shared consciousness with their hive. Engineer Taeyang, the Nethics officer said in her clicking, translated voice. I need your help. I was told humans can repair what others cannot. Taeyang put down his tools. I can try. What needs fixing? We have. The Nethics officer produced a small crystalline object from a protective case. It glowed with a soft blue light, but the glow flickered and stuttered like a dying heartbeat. This is a memory core, she explained. It contains the personality patterns of my family line. 17 generations. Their memories, their knowledge, their essence. During a power surge 3 months ago, it was damaged. The data is corrupted. Our best technicians say it cannot be recovered. Taeyang took the core carefully. He wasn't a data specialist. He worked on ship systems, power relays, mechanical repairs, but he looked at the desperate hope in the Nethics officer's multiple eyes and heard himself say, "Let me see what I can do." He brought the problem to Hana, a human communications officer who had studied digital archaeology before joining the fleet. Together, they examined the core. It's bad, Hana said after running her first analysis. The data isn't just corrupted, it's scrambled. Pieces are missing entirely. This would take months to sort through, if it's even possible. The Nethics officer says her technicians already tried, Taeyang said. Their approach would be different from ours, Hana mused. She pulled up the analysis on her screen, studying the patterns of corruption. They think in terms of hive logic, shared consciousness. But humans process data differently. We look for individual patterns, personal quirks, unique signatures. So we might see things they missed? Maybe. Hannah started typing rapidly. It's worth a try. For 4 months, they worked on the memory core. They met in Hannah's quarters after their shifts, surrounded by screens showing cascading data streams. They learned to read the patterns of Nethics memory storage. They wrote programs to search for fragments and piece them together like a vast puzzle. It was painstaking work. They recovered a memory here, a personality fragment there. Sometimes, they would work for days and find nothing. Other times, they would discover a cluster of intact data that made the Nethics officer weep with joy. We can't get everything, Hana told the officer during one update meeting. Some data is just gone. But we can recover the patterns, the connections, the threads that run through your family line. It won't be complete, but it will be continuous. Continuity is everything, the officer replied. Without it, we are lost. Give me what you can. When they finally returned the memory core, it held perhaps 60% of its original data. But that 60% included the core personality patterns, the shared memories that defined the family line, and the connections between generations. The Nethics officer held the core like it was sacred. You have given my family back. Aloning, she said. Not perfectly, but enough. Enough to continue. Enough to remember. Enough to pass on. Word of the recovery spread through the Nethics hive networks, which connected to Nethics across the entire fleet. Soon, other species heard about it. The humans who could fix a blade had now recovered corrupted data that experts said was lost forever. Then came Daehyun's case. He was a medical officer working in the ship's hospital when a Graxis soldier was brought in. The Graxis were tall, elegant beings who communicated through complex gestures and sounds below human hearing range. They were warrior poets, a species that saw no difference between fighting and art. The soldier had survived a brutal battle, physically intact but psychologically shattered. He could no longer produce or perceive the harmonic frequencies that Graxis used to express emotion. To his people, he was effectively mute. He could speak words, but he could not communicate feeling, truth, or poetry. For a Graxis, this was worse than death. Can you help him? The soldier's commander asked Daehyun. Your medicine? The damage isn't physical, Daehyun said after examining the soldier. It's psychological trauma. His body works fine. His mind has shut down the ability to process these frequencies as a defense mechanism. Then he is lost. Maybe not. Daehyun thought about what he had heard regarding Jiho and the blade, about Taeyang and Hana with the memory core. Let me try something different. Let me try something different. He started with music. Human music. He played instruments for the soldier. Simple melodies at first. The soldier showed no reaction. But Daehyun persisted. He tried different instruments, different styles. He played drums, flutes, string instruments. He played everything from classical to modern. Slowly, over weeks, something changed. The soldier began to tap his fingers to rhythms. Then, he started humming. Then, one day, he picked up a simple human flute and played a note. It was shaky and uncertain, but it was sound. From there, they built back slowly. Daehyun taught the soldier human musical theory. The soldier began to blend it with Graxis harmonic traditions. He couldn't produce the pure Graxis frequencies anymore, but he found he could create new patterns by combining human and Graxis styles. 6 months after the treatment began, the soldier performed a piece for his commander. It was unlike any traditional Graxis poetry. It used human instruments to carry Graxis harmonic patterns. It was hybrid, mixed, imperfect. It was beautiful. The commander stood silent for a long moment after the performance. Then he spoke. "This is not our way. But it is a way. You have found a new voice. Perhaps that is enough." More stories spread. A human chef named Suman helped a grieving Torvin rebuild his relationship with his family through shared meals. A human botanist named Minji restored a grove of ceremonial trees that everyone said were beyond saving. A human artist named Hyunwoo helped a traumatized scout learn to dream again after nightmares had stolen his sleep. Each story was different. Each solution was unique, but a pattern emerged that made the other species whisper in wonder. Humans didn't just repair objects or restore data or treat symptoms. They did something deeper. They found new ways forward when the old ways were broken. They adapted. They improvised. They made something new from broken pieces. The fleet began to understand something profound. When a Velcrin blade breaks, Velcrin smiths try to restore it to exactly what it was. When they fail, the blade is discarded. But humans took the broken blade and made it twice forged, honoring both what it was and what it survived. When Nethic's data corrupts, Nethic's technicians try to recover every bit perfectly. When they fail, the data is considered lost, but humans recovered the patterns and called it continuity, accepting that imperfect preservation was better than perfect loss. When a Graxis warrior loses his voice, Graxis medicine tries to restore his original frequencies. When they fail, the warrior is considered dead. But humans gave him a new voice, different but functional, and called it healing. The whispers grew louder. The stories multiplied. And slowly, the fleet came to a new understanding. Humans didn't just mend broken things. They mended broken souls. And they did it not by making things perfect, but by making brokenness survivable, by making it meaningful, by showing that the mended version could be just as valuable as the original, sometimes even more so, because it carried the story of survival. The word spread, and the galaxy was listening. Number. The first, soul. Commander Valth was ancient by any species standard. He had lived for 847 years. His body built of something like living stone that aged slowly and endured almost anything. The Kryn were one of the oldest races in the coalition, powerful and proud, with a culture built entirely on honor and duty. Valth commanded 3 battle groups and had fought in more conflicts than most species had recorded in their histories. His name was known across the fleet as a symbol of Kryn strength and wisdom. When he walked through the corridors, soldiers of every species stepped aside and lowered their heads in respect, which made it all the more shocking when he appeared at the human quarters late one night, alone and without announcement. Captain Hyun was in his office reviewing supply reports when the door chimed. He opened it to find the massive Kryn commander standing in the corridor, his stone-like skin glowing faintly in the dim light. "Commander Volth," Hyun said, immediately standing straighter. "This is unexpected. How can I help you?" "I need to speak with you," Volth said in his deep, rumbling voice. "Privately. And with your medical officer, Dr. Yuna." Hyun felt a chill of concern. "Are you injured? Sick? Hyun? 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 Sick? No." Volth's expression was difficult to read. "It is something else. Please." 20 minutes later, they sat in a small conference room. Dr. Yuna had arrived quickly, still wearing her off-duty clothes. She sat across from Volth, studying him with professional concern. "Commander," Hyun said gently, "what's wrong?" Volth was silent for a long time. For a being who commanded thousands and made decisions that affected millions, he seemed suddenly uncertain. When he finally spoke, his voice was quieter than either human had ever heard. "I have heard the stories about your people," he said. "The Velkryn warrior and his blade, the Nethix officer and her family memories, the Graxis soldier who found a new voice. I have heard you called menders, that you fix broken things. We try to help where we can," Yuna said carefully. "Can you help me?" Volth looked at his hands, massive and powerful. "I am broken. Not my body. My body is strong, but inside, I am empty. I have been empty for longer than I can remember." Hyun and Yuna exchanged glances. They had dealt with trauma, with grief, with physical injuries. But this was different. "Tell us," Yuna said. "Help us understand." Volth took a breath that sounded like stones grinding together. "I have lived for 8 centuries. I have fought in 62 major conflicts. I have seen civilizations rise and collapse. I have made decisions that saved millions and decisions that killed thousands. I have done my duty with honor. But somewhere along the way, I lost the reason for it all." He looked up at them, and they could see something in his ancient eyes that shocked them. It was pain. Deep, old pain that had been carried for centuries. "My people live for duty," Volth continued. "We exist to serve the Kryn Empire, to maintain order, to enforce honor. We do not question. We do not doubt. But I have begun to question everything. What is the point of living if living feels like nothing? What is honor if honoring it brings no meaning? I go through the motions. I give orders. I fight battles. But I feel nothing. I am a shell, walking through existence." "Depression," Yuna said softly. "What you're describing sounds like severe depression. Maybe existential crisis. In my culture, we have no word for these things." Volth said, "We have only one solution for a warrior who has lost their purpose. We call it the warrior's ending. Ritual combat, until death. It is seen as honorable. The warrior dies in battle rather than living as an empty shell." "You came here instead of choosing that," Hyun observed. "I heard the stories," Volth repeated. "I heard that humans mend broken things, even things that seem beyond repair, even souls." He looked directly at Yuna. "Can you mend a broken soul?" Yuna was quiet for a moment, thinking carefully about her answer. "I don't know," she said honestly. "I'm a doctor, not a miracle worker. What you're describing is complex. It's psychological, existential, spiritual. It's tangled up with your culture, your long life, your experiences. I can't promise to fix you, but you will try?" There was desperation in Volth's voice, barely hidden beneath his usual control. "Yes," Yuna said. "I will try. But you need to understand something. I won't try to fix you the way your culture would. I won't try to make you feel honor and duty again. I'm going to help you find something different. Something new. Are you willing to try a different path? Valth was silent for a long moment. Then he nodded. I am willing. I have nothing left to lose. The work began the next day. Yuna assembled a small team of humans. Mingho, who had studied philosophy before joining the fleet. Nari, a cultural anthropologist. Sojun, a therapist who specialized in existential counseling. They met with Valth in secret, in a small room away from the rest of the crew. The first month was just talking. Valth spoke about his life, his long centuries of service. He described battles that had scarred his memory. He talked about friends who had died centuries ago. He spoke about the weight of duty, the burden of command. You've been living for duty for so long, Minho said during one session. But duty is something external. It's something given to you by others. Have you ever asked what you want? Not what you should want. What you actually want. I don't understand the question, Valth replied. That's the problem, Seo-jun said gently. Your culture taught you to ignore that question, to treat it as irrelevant. But meaning doesn't come from duty alone. It comes from choice, from personal desire, from finding something that matters to you specifically. They introduced Valth to human concepts that were foreign to Kryn culture. They taught him about existentialism, the idea that meaning is not given, but created. They showed him art and poetry, forms of expression that had no place in Kryn military tradition. They taught him about small joys, simple pleasures, the idea that a life's value wasn't only measured in grand achievements. Your people see life as a mission to complete, Nari explained. But humans see life as an experience to live. The value isn't just in what you accomplish. It's in what you feel, what you learn, what you connect with. Valth struggled with these ideas. His entire existence had been built on different principles. But slowly, something began to shift. He started keeping a journal, writing down thoughts and feelings instead of just reports and tactical analyses. He began to spend time in the ship's observation deck, just watching stars, not for strategic purposes but because they were beautiful. He asked questions, simple, profound questions that his culture had taught him not to ask. What makes something beautiful? Why does music move people? What does it mean to be happy? What is the value of a single quiet moment? Month by month, Valth changed. Not back to what he was, but into something new. He still carried his weariness. He still felt the weight of his centuries. But he began to find pockets of meaning. A conversation with Minho about philosophy. A poem that Nari shared. A moment of silence, watching stars with Sojun. 6 months into the work, Valth made a decision. He requested a meeting with his superiors and resigned his military commission. The Kryn command was shocked. Commanders did not resign. They served until death or until they chose the warrior's ending. But Valth explained his choice with calm certainty. I have served with honor for 8 centuries. But I need to serve something different now. I need to help others who feel as I felt, who are lost in their own duties and traditions. I want to become something my people have never had. A guide for those experiencing soul sickness. The Kryn command reluctantly accepted his resignation. And Valth became something unprecedented in his culture. A counselor. A listener. A guide for warriors, experiencing what he had experienced. The transformation sent waves through the entire fleet. If Commander Valth, ancient and powerful and honored, could admit to being broken and could be helped, then perhaps the stories about humans were more than stories. Perhaps humans really could mend souls. Word spread rapidly. Other species began to wonder. If humans could reach even someone like Valth, if they could touch a soul 8 centuries old and hardened by countless battles, what else could they do? People started to come. Not with broken blades or corrupted data or physical injuries. They came with broken hearts, with lost purposes, with souls that felt empty. And the humans, unprepared and overwhelmed, tried their best to help, because that's what they did. They mended broken things, even when those things were as complex and mysterious as souls. The pilgrimage begins. The news of Commander Valth's transformation spread beyond the military fleet faster than anyone expected. It traveled through trade networks and diplomatic channels. It was discussed in alien academies and whispered about in distant colonies. The story became legend. An ancient warrior, empty and ready to die, had found new purpose through human help. Within weeks, the human quarters aboard the Talon's Edge began receiving unusual requests. They came through official channels and unofficial ones. They came from nearby ships and from star systems weeks away. Species that had barely heard of humans were now seeking them out. They called it the pilgrimage. It started small. A Selvath merchant named Torven arrived at the human medical bay, carrying a sealed container. He was a small, furry being with large eyes and trembling hands. He asked for Jiwoo, a human grief counselor who had joined the fleet only 6 months ago. "My mate died 4 cycles ago," Torven said, placing the container on the table between them. "These are her ashes. In my culture, we are supposed to release them in a ceremony and move forward immediately. But I cannot. I still grieve. My people say this makes me weak, that I dishonor her memory by not releasing it properly." Jiwoo looked at the small container with sadness. "Your people don't allow time for grief? We believe grief is selfish. The dead are gone. The living must continue. To dwell on loss is to waste the present." Torven's voice cracked. "But I cannot stop thinking of her. I cannot stop hurting. Something is wrong with me." "Nothing is wrong with you," Jiwoo said gently. "You're grieving. That's natural. It's healthy. Grief isn't weakness. It's love with nowhere to go." Over the next weeks, Jiwoo met with Torven regularly. She introduced him to human concepts of mourning, to the idea that grief was not something to rush through, but something to experience fully. She taught him that remembering the dead wasn't dishonoring them but celebrating their impact on life. Slowly, Torven began to heal. Not by forgetting or moving on quickly, but by learning to carry his grief in a way that honored both his mate and himself. When he finally released her ashes in ceremony, he did it not because custom demanded it, but because he was ready. He told others about the human who had helped him. And more came. A Drexian pilot named Kala arrived next. The Drexians were a proud warrior race, their entire identity built around fearlessness in combat. But Kala had frozen during a battle. For just a moment, she had been paralyzed by fear. She was dishonored and exiled. But she had heard about humans who helped broken warriors. She found Taeyang, now known throughout the fleet as someone who solved impossible problems. "I am a coward," Kala said bluntly. "My people have no use for cowards. But I heard humans can fix anything. Can you fix me?" Taeyang ran tests with Yuna's help. They discovered that Kala had a sensory processing disorder, something her people had never identified because they didn't have frameworks for it. In high-stress situations with multiple stimuli, her brain temporarily shut down. It wasn't cowardice. It was a neurological condition. With medication and therapy, Kala learned to manage it. She returned to flight. And this time, her commanders knew to give her specific types of assignments that worked with her condition rather than against it. She wasn't broken. She just needed understanding. The stream of visitors increased. Dozens came. Then hundreds. They arrived from across the coalition with problems their own cultures couldn't solve. Warriors with trauma that their people called weakness. Artists who had lost inspiration and were considered dead by their communities. Leaders paralyzed by impossible decisions. Parents who couldn't connect with children. Elders who couldn't find peace. The human contingent was completely overwhelmed. They were engineers, medical officers, soldiers, technicians. None of them had signed up to become counselors to an entire civilization. Captain Hyun called an emergency meeting in the human quarters. Everyone was exhausted. Yuna had dark circles under her eyes from working double shifts. Jiho had stopped taking maintenance assignments to focus on helping aliens repair not just objects but the meaning behind them. Seojun was meeting with 5 new cases every day. "This is unsustainable," Hyun said, looking around at his tired team. "We're going to burn out. We need help. We can't turn them away," Yuna said. "Some of these beings are genuinely suicidal. Their cultures have failed them. We're their last hope." "Then we need more humans," Minho suggested. "Specialists. Actual therapists. Counselors. People trained for this work. And we need a system," Nari added. "Right now everyone just shows up. We need organization, schedules, proper facilities." Hyun made the calls. He contacted human colonies, put out requests for volunteers with psychological and counseling backgrounds. He requisitioned space on the ship for proper treatment facilities. He organized the human team into specialties and created schedules. Within 3 months, more humans arrived. Volunteers who had heard about the work and wanted to help. They brought expertise in different areas: trauma counseling, family therapy, art therapy, grief counseling, addiction treatment. They brought human knowledge accumulated over thousands of years of dealing with mental health, with existential crises, with the simple truth that minds could break and needed care. They transformed a section of the ship into what they called the Mending House. It had private rooms for confidential sessions, group spaces for shared healing, art studios and music rooms, and quiet gardens. It looked nothing like a military facility. It looked like a place designed for healing. And still they came. The diversity of cases was staggering. Every species brought different problems. But they all stemmed from the same root. Their cultures had developed in ways that left certain types of suffering unaddressed. The Velcrin warrior culture had no framework for processing fear. So soldiers with combat anxiety were exiled rather than helped. The Nethix hive minds were brilliant collectively, but struggled with individual identity crises. The Graxis warrior poets could express every emotion through their harmonics except silence. So those who needed quiet were lost. The Kryn had duty, but no concept of personal fulfillment. But humans had frameworks for all of it. Not because humans were wiser or better, but because human history was messy. Humanity had survived wars, plagues, disasters, social upheavals. They had invented therapy because they needed it. They created art to process trauma. They built philosophies to handle existential dread. They had learned, through painful experience, that breaking was part of living, and that healing was possible. Yuna wrote in her personal log one night, "They bring us their souls because we're the only species that admits souls can break. Every other species sees psychological suffering as a personal failure or a spiritual weakness. But humans built entire systems around the idea that sometimes things fall apart. And that's okay. That's survivable. That's fixable." The Mending House became famous across the coalition. Diplomats visited to observe. Military leaders sent officers to study the methods. Religious figures debated the philosophical implications of humans treating what many cultures considered spiritual matters through psychological means. But for the humans running it, the work was simple. One person at a time. One session at a time. One small step toward healing at a time. Then came the request that would change everything. A delegation from the Velcrin Elder Council arrived with an official proposal. They wanted to establish a permanent mending house on their homeworld. They wanted humans to come live among them, to teach their culture how to heal psychological wounds alongside physical ones. It was the first of many such requests. Within a year, 5 different species had asked for human counselors to establish facilities on their worlds. The humans, the newcomers, the Deathworlders that other species had been wary of, were becoming something new. They were becoming the menders. The ones who tended to souls. The ones who showed that brokenness wasn't the end. And the galaxy was learning, slowly, that maybe healing was more valuable than any weapon. What humans truly mend. 2 years after Jiho had repaired a young Velkrin's blade in a cargo bay, the Galactic Coalition convened a historic summit. Representatives from every member species gathered in the massive conference station orbiting the neutral world of Axios Prime. The topic had been announced months in advance, giving everyone time to prepare their positions. Should human therapeutic practices be formally recognized as a coalition-wide resource? The debate had been fierce even before the summit began. Some species celebrated what humans had accomplished. Others were skeptical. A few were openly hostile to the idea that psychological problems should be treated rather than overcome through willpower or tradition. Leading the opposition was the Archon Imperium. The Archon were one of the oldest and most powerful species in known space. They had existed for millions of years, developing technology and philosophy far beyond most other races. They had representatives on every major council body. Their approval or disapproval could determine the future of human integration into the coalition. The summit chamber was enormous, with seating for thousands of delegates. Captain Hyun sat in the human section, surrounded by his team. Yuna was beside him, looking calm, despite the tension. Jiho, Taeyang, Hana, and the others who had started this whole movement sat in the rows behind them. The Archon representative was called Kelvin Thar. He was tall and thin, his skin a pale blue that seemed to glow with inner light. The Archon rarely showed emotion, priding themselves on pure logic and reason. When he stood to speak, the entire chamber fell silent. "I will be direct," Kelvin Thar said, his translated voice clear and cold. "The humans claim to mend souls. They claim to heal psychological damage through therapeutic intervention. But where is the evidence that this is true healing rather than simply making the damaged accept their damage?" He gestured toward the human section. "You apply primitive psychological techniques to complex beings. You offer temporary comfort, not permanent solutions. You encourage the broken to remain broken while learning to live with it. This is not healing. This is enabling weakness." Murmurs spread through the chamber. Some delegates nodded in agreement. Others looked uncertain. Hyun felt his stomach tighten. Everything they had built could collapse based on this argument. "The Archon Imperium has existed for millions of years," Kelvin Thar continued. "We have eliminated most psychological disorders through genetic modification and neural optimization. We have created a society where mental suffering is rare. We do not need therapy because we have transcended the need for it. Perhaps other species should pursue this path, rather than accepting human methods that merely manage suffering rather than eliminate it." The chamber erupted in discussion. Hyun stood to respond, but before he could speak, someone else rose from the delegate section. It was Commander Valth. The ancient Kryn warrior walked slowly to the speaking platform, his massive stone-like form drawing every eye in the chamber. He had not been scheduled to speak, but the summit moderators allowed him to approach. "I will address this," Valth said in his deep, rumbling voice. "I am Commander Valth of the Kryn military. 2 years ago, I was prepared to choose the warrior's ending, not because I was wounded or diseased, not because I had failed in duty, but because I could no longer find meaning in existence." He turned to face Kelvin Thar directly. "By my culture's standards, by the logic of strength and honor, I was finished. I was ready to die in ritual combat. That was the only solution my ancient and proud culture offered." Valth gestured toward the human section. "These humans did not make me stronger. They did not grant me new purpose through some technological enhancement. They did not fix me in the way you suggest healing should work." His voice grew stronger, filling the chamber. "What they did was far more profound. They taught me that I did not need fixing, that my pain was not a flaw, but a signal, that my questions were not weakness, but wisdom. They did not restore me to what I was. They helped me discover what I could become." The chamber was absolutely silent now. Every delegate listened. "The Archons speak of transcending brokenness through genetic modification," Valth continued. But humans understand something you have forgotten in your millions of years of optimization. Brokenness is not the opposite of wholeness. The scar is not separate from the skin. The repaired blade is not lesser than the original. It is the original, plus everything it survived. He turned to address the full council. Humans do not mend broken things by making them unbroken. They mend them by making brokenness survivable, by making it meaningful, by teaching us that having cracks does not mean you are shattered. Sometimes it just means you have lived. Valth returned to his seat. For a long moment, no one spoke. Then, one by one, others stood. Kresh, now a decorated Velkrin warrior, spoke about his twice-forged blade and how it had saved his life and honor. The Nethics officer spoke about her recovered family archive and the continuity it gave her. The Graxis soldier demonstrated his hybrid harmonic style, blending human and Graxis music into something new and beautiful. Dozens more came forward. Each told their story. Each explained how humans had helped them not by fixing them perfectly, but by helping them find ways to live with their damage, to make meaning from their suffering, to transform their wounds into wisdom. Then something unexpected happened. An Archon stood. Not Kelvin Thar, but another delegate named Mirhen Sar. She was younger than Kelvin Thar by Archon standards, perhaps only 50,000 years old. She removed her formal headdress, which in Archon culture was a gesture of profound vulnerability. "I must confess something," Mirhen Sar said, her voice shaking slightly. "I have visited the human mending house. In secret." Shock rippled through the Archon delegation. Kelvin Thar stared at her in disbelief. "For 1,200 years, I have served the Imperium with perfect efficiency," Mirhen Sar continued. "I have never failed a task, never questioned an order, never expressed doubt. I have been the ideal Archon citizen, and I have been utterly, completely, empty inside." She looked at Kelvin Thar. "We Archon have achieved immortality, but we have forgotten how to live. We have eliminated suffering, but also joy. We have perfected existence, but lost its purpose. We are so optimized that we have optimized away everything that makes life worth living." Turning to the humans, her voice became stronger. "I went to the mending house because I was broken in a way our culture has no name for. And the humans did not fix me by making me into a better Archon. They helped me remember that before I was Archon, I was simply a being who wanted to matter, who wanted to feel something, who wanted life to have meaning beyond efficient execution of tasks." The summit moderators called for a vote. The motion was clear. Should human therapeutic and restorative practices be formally recognized as a coalition-wide resource, with humans granted authority to establish mending houses across member worlds? The vote was overwhelming. Even many of the Archon delegation, moved by Mirhen Sar's confession, voted in favor. But more important than the vote was what came next. The summit concluded with an announcement. The establishment of the Mending Corps, a coalition-wide organization dedicated to psychological and spiritual restoration. It would be led by humans but would train practitioners from all species, sharing human knowledge while respecting cultural differences. 3 years later, the changes were visible across the galaxy. Jiho stood in a workshop on the Velkrin homeworld, teaching a class of young Velkrin smiths. They were learning to repair ceremonial blades, but not in the old way. They were learning the human philosophy that repair was honorable, that visible mending was a testament to survival, not a mark of shame. Yuna had established a training academy where humans and aliens studied together. They developed new therapeutic approaches that blended human psychology with alien cultural understanding. A Graxis therapist might use harmonic techniques alongside human talk therapy. A Nethics counselor might apply hive logic patterns to help individuals find their place within collective consciousness. Captain Hyun oversaw 73 mending houses across 18 worlds. Each was adapted to local needs while maintaining the core human principle. Brokenness was not the end of the story. It was just a chapter. And in a quiet garden on the Kryn homeworld, Commander Valth sat with a young Kryn warrior who was experiencing her first spiritual crisis. She was strong and capable, but she had begun to question her purpose. Her commanders called it weakness. She called it doubt. Valth listened to her story, then spoke gently. Humans taught me something important. They do not mend broken things by pretending they were never broken. They mend them by showing that broken things can still be beautiful, still be strong, still be whole. The young warrior looked at him with desperate hope. But what if I am never the same? What if this doubt never goes away? Valth smiled, a gesture his species had learned from humans. Then, you will be something better. You will be someone who knows how to question. And when others begin to question, you will be able to show them that doubt is not weakness. It is the beginning of wisdom. The young warrior sat with this for a long moment. Then she asked, "Will you help me?" "Yes," Valth said. "And I will show you what humans showed me. That the mended version of yourself can be stronger than the original. Because it will carry the story of everything you survived." Across the galaxy, the work continued. One blade at a time. One soul at a time. One story at a time. Because that was what humans had taught the galaxy. Everyone breaks. Every species. Every individual. Every soul encounters moments when they shatter, but with patience, with care, with someone willing to sit with you in your brokenness, everyone could also mend. And sometimes, the mended version was not just as good as the original. Sometimes it was stronger, wiser, more beautiful, because it carried within it the proof of survival, the testament of adaptation, the story of becoming whole again. The predator cubs had told everyone that humans mend broken things. And they were right. But what humans truly mended was not just objects or data or bodies. What humans mended was hope. They showed the galaxy that brokenness was not permanent, that healing was possible, that there was always a way forward, even when the old path had shattered. And that gift, that simple, profound gift of showing others how to survive their own breaking, was perhaps the greatest thing humanity had ever offered to the stars.